like your Food Lion or your Kroger saving card. Whenever you make fuel purchases, you're able to save money on fuel. You can also earn points and redeem rewards. Many truck stops provide many items and amenities and truck stops that truckers may use when they're out there on the road. And typically, the truck stop is a little bit more expensive than in normal situations, simply because of the convenience. Some truck stops have a program set up where you can earn points, and you can purchase things at the truck stop with your fuel card. Things like showers, parking spots, food if necessary, and some other items that they may have behind the shelf, which you can purchase with your points. So the factoring services allows you to control your cash flow. One of the cool things about the factoring services that we provide is it gives you an opportunity to bypass the motor carrier company. Lots of drivers may take out check advance loans from their motor carrier company, but then you have to pay back those high fees and interest rates. That kind of keeps you in this cycle or loop of borrowing from your motor carrier company. But one of the ways to avoid such things is to use our fuel card services. Factoring allows you to control your cash flow so you can have cash on hand and on demand when you need it. So once you get with your motor carrier company, they assign you what we call a fleet card. That fleet card is what you use to purchase fuel, DEF, and other necessities for the truck when you're out there on the roadway. This fuel card will accompany that, giving you an opportunity to earn points, save money. I'm pretty sure your trucking company would love to see those savings roll in when you're purchasing fuel out there. And the last thing that we have here is the referral bonus program. Now this is the part that I love when we get to give back to our students, when we get to give back to those who have invested in us or through us. And this is a great opportunity for you to create a second residual or what we call a passive income. You can join the referral bonus program by going to our website. You can also talk to your branch manager or what we call BDS. If you have a 160 PLC, you can reach out to them. They'll give you more details about this as far as eligibility and terms, how it applies. But basically, you sign up for the referral bonus program. For each person that you refer to 160 Driving Academy that graduates from our training program, you'll receive $250. Upon their graduation, you'll receive $250. Now, if you just have one person per week, per month sign up, you have $1,000 in your pocket easy. So this is a great way for you to make that passive income. And the cool thing about it is there are no limits or no caps on how many people you can refer. You can refer as many people as you like. Some of our students have gone as far as posting 160 ads on their social media, just so that it's constantly pushing opportunity out there. And many of them have become what we call little 160 recruiters. And one of the successful ways that they're able to do that is because, of course, taking advantage of social media, taking advantage of other things that we have available out there as a source. Also, they're on the road, some of them, and so they're meeting new people every day. They're going to new locations. People see them driving their truck, especially when you first get your CDL license. Your family members, your friends, and people around you are like, where are you? I haven't seen you in a while. and that's a great opportunity to push it to them and say, hey, listen, I got my CDL license. You should think about doing the same. So it's a great way for you to earn a secondary income without any hassle, without any strain. If you do it the right way, this could make money for you, and you don't even have to worry about it. It'll just make money all while you're making money driving a commercial truck. So we invite you to participate in those things. At this time, we're going to get into today's lesson. Today, we're going to be picking up with air brakes and combination vehicles. I do apologize for my camera. I'm going to fix that in just a minute. It went out just a few minutes ago. But we're going to get into air brakes and combination vehicles today. One of my favorite topics to cover here in the class. I thoroughly enjoy working with my hands. I love mechanics. I love building things and stuff like that. So we're going to get into this topic here. We're going to talk about some really cool things. We're going to go over some topics that you need to know in regards to how the air brake system works, how they function. We're also going to be taking a look at what you need to know in regards to combination vehicles. Now, please keep in mind that the information we cover here is specific to these topics. So we're going to be covering a lot of information in a small amount of time. I want to kind of give you a heads up. You may feel overwhelmed today, but that's okay. That's because we're pumping on new information to you. General knowledge was pretty simple because it was general information, but this is not. This is specific information, so therefore it's going to be a little bit more strenuous. A few things that can help you through this process. Okay? A few things that will help you through this process. Number one, making sure that you have a distraction-free environment so you can be able to listen and follow along. If you can, if you need to, wearing a set of headphones would be great. It's also going to be very important that you're listening and paying attention. Here's why. We're going to display on the screen the things that are valuable for you to know in regards to your licensing and testing exam. But I'm going to be providing understanding of that information verbally. So it's going to be important that you're listening. I noticed in general knowledge, many of you was taking notes and things. That's great. If you want to take notes, that's fine. I can tell you though, based on my experience providing lecture courses, it's very difficult to listen and write at the same time. It's also very difficult to grasp the understanding of the information without hearing it. So please keep in mind that everything that we provide you with on the screen is already available for you. We've already taken the liberty of taking the notes for you. It's going to be on you to study that information. It would behoove you to listen and follow along today. We're going to start off with air brake section. Air brake section starts off here in section 5. So let's take a look at our roadmap, see what we've got to cover today. We're going to start off in section 5.1. We'll wrap up the morning with section 5.4. We'll come back for lunch. We'll start in section 6, and then we'll close out the day with section 6.5. Now, air brakes is, of course, the section in which we have our introduction into air brakes. Section 5.1 talks about the parts and components that make up an air brake system. It also talks about how they work and function. So we're going to kick that off today. We'll take a look into that. The first thing we're going to do is provide you with a visual for the information. And the reason and purpose that that visuals are so important here is because we don't have a commercial motor vehicle in front of us, and therefore we can't physically touch these items. So we're going to have to rely on what we can see. So we're going to be playing videos for you. We'll show pictures. We'll also provide understanding. Please keep in mind that you will be applying this information when you get to the second half of the training. At this stage, you just need to know the information. So you need to collect the information, harness it, study it, so you can utilize it when you get to the yard. Okay. Without further ado, let's take a look into air brakes training. how they apply to safe drivability. If you want to drive a truck or a bus with air brakes, or pull a trailer with air brakes, you need to study this section. If you want to pull a trailer with air brakes, you also need to study section 6, combination vehicles. Air brakes use compressed air to make the brakes work. Air brakes are a good and safe way of stopping large and heavy vehicles, but the brakes must be well maintained and used properly. You want to keep in mind that air brakes are a good and safe way of stopping large and heavy vehicles, but the brakes must be well maintained and used properly. Air brakes are really 3 different operating systems. We have the service system, the parking system, and the emergency system. We'll talk about each of these systems and how they apply their braking power to the vehicle. Starting with the service system. The service system is the most important of the 3 systems. Why? Well, because the service system is what we use to slow and stop the vehicle. Once the vehicle is underway, you'll need to be able to stop it. To do so, we use the service system. The service system applies and releases the brakes when you use the brake pedal during normal driving. The service system utilizes air pressure to apply and or release the brakes. This is so you can slow and stop the vehicle. The service system is controlled using a foot valve, and in combination vehicles, a hand valve. Next, we have the parking system. The parking system applies and releases the parking brakes when you use the parking brake control. Pressure to hold the vehicle in place. The parking system is controlled using a yellow, diamond-shaped push-pull control knob inside the cab, labeled parking brake. Last but not least, we have the emergency system. Note that the emergency system is not a physical brake, such as the service and parking systems. The emergency system is a series of sensor and valve. This series of sensor and valve detects a rapid air loss in the system and then alerts the driver that the pressure in the system is low. If the pressure continues to drop, the valve will close, shutting the air off to the spring brake is known as emergency braking, controlled by the driver. So now that we know the 3 operating systems that make up an air brake system, we're going to move along into the parts and components that make up these systems. Remember that there are 2 types of parts. There are parts that are required on vehicles with air brakes in order for the air brakes to function. And then there are those that can be added on to make it more effective or to help maintain the system. These are known as add-on features. We're going to go through and talk about the different parts. I'll distinguish the difference between those that are required and those that are added on as we go. In order for the air brake system to work, we must have compressed air. To create this compressed air, an air compressor is used. The air compressor creates and pumps air into the air storage tanks or reservoirs. The air compressor is connected to the engine through gears or a V-belt. The compressor may be air-cooled or may be cooled by the engine cooling system. It may have its own oil supply or be lubricated by engine oil. If the compressor has its own oil supply, you want to check the oil level before driving the vehicle. Keep in mind that whether the air compressor is gear-driven or belt-driven, whether the air compressor is air-cooled or liquid-cooled, whether it has its own lubrication or is lubricated by engine oil, each air compressor has a two-stroke engine design and therefore is not designed to constantly run. This means that it must be shut off whenever it is not creating compressed air. To do this, we use what's called an air compressor governor. The governor controls when the air compressor will pump air into the air storage tank. It does this using a cut-in and cut-out pressure. When the air tank pressure rises to the cutout level, around 125, when the tank pressure falls to the cut-in pressure, around 100 psi, the governor allows the compressor to start pumping again. I want you to think of the relationship between the air compressor and the air compressor governor as you would the human body. The air compressor is the muscle of the operation. The governor is the brain. The brain tells the muscle when to do the work and when to stop doing the work. Now that we have created the compressed air, in order for the air to be used, it must first be stored. To store the air, we use air storage tanks or reservoirs. Air storage tanks are used to hold compressed air. The number and size of air tanks varies amongst vehicles. The tanks will hold enough air to allow the brakes to be used several times, even if the compressor stops working. Keep in mind that not all vehicles equipped with air brakes are created equal. Some vehicles, based on their design, will require more air than others. For example, some commercial motor vehicles may have air ride suspension, air ride cabs, air ride seats, air-driven windows, air-shifted transmissions. They may also have self-inflating tires or air-driven tools in which the driver can use at necessary and or appointed times. Because of this, the size and number of air tanks will vary by vehicle. Manufacturers will provide the necessary amount of air tanks to drive or power these air-driven components. Because of this, there is no specified amount of air that an air tank should hold. An air tank should hold enough air to allow the brakes to be used several times, even if the compressor stops working. This brings us to a pop quiz question. How much air should an air tank hold?
No specified amount.
How much air should an air tank hold? All right, green peas. Some of y'all got it out there. Some of you all missed the mark. You want to make sure you have your listening cap on. I do that every week just to make sure everyone's paying attention, because I give you the answer right before I ask the question. So keep in mind that the question is, how much air should an air tank hold? So the answer would not be in the form of pounds per square inch. That's measuring pressure. The question is not how much pressure should an air brake system have. The question is how much air should an air tank hold. Because it varies in size and number, there is no manufacturer specification or requirement. The air tank should hold enough air to allow the brakes to be used several times, even if the compressor stops working. This will ensure that you're able to stop the vehicle even after or beyond the point at which the air compressor quits. So that answer should be enough. How do we know that? Well, because we measure the amount of air by volume, not by pressure, by volume. So you would be looking at the size and number of the tanks to determine such. For example, you may have two very large tanks, such as 50-gallon air tanks. You may have 5 small 10-gallon tanks. So once again, the amount of air is not specified. The answer is enough air. Sort of like that film with J-Lo. Keep in mind that compressed air usually has some water and compressor oil in it, which is bad for the air brake system. For example, the water and compressor oil will be sent by the air compressor to the air tanks. This is usually something that occurs during the process of creating compressed air due to the condensation that's created during that process. You will get a little oil and water in the air tanks. The oil comes from the compressor and its lubrication system, and the water is a part of the condensation process. This could be bad for the air brake system. For example, the water can freeze in cold weather and cause brake failure. The water and oil tend to collect in the bottom of the air tank. You want to be sure that you drain the air tanks completely. Each air tank is equipped with a drain valve in the bottom. There are 2 types of drain valves. We have a manual operated drain valve, and then we have an automatic drain valve. We have a manual and an automatic. A manual and an automatic. Say it with me. Manual and automatic. Let's try that one more time. We didn't see anybody's mouth movement.
God. This dude's so running.
It'd be hard to stay awake in this shit.
Yeah.
I don't think you can drink enough caffeine to stay up. Dang.
We have manual and automatic. By turning a quarter turn or by pulling a cable, you must drain the manual tanks yourself at the end of each driving day. With automatic air tanks, water and oil are automatically expelled with automatic drain. These tanks may be equipped for manual draining as well. Automatic tanks are available with electric heating devices. These help prevent freezing of the automatic drains in cold weather. Speaking of cold weather, some drivers operating commercial motor vehicles may do so in constant cold weather conditions. Because of this, many of these commercial vehicles are equipped with an add-on feature which can be added onto the air brake system to make it more effective or to help maintain the system. This is known as an alcohol evaporator. Some air brake systems have an alcohol evaporator to put an alcohol into the air system. This helps to reduce the risk of ice in the air brake valves and other parts during cold weather. Ice inside the system can make the brake stop working. You want to check the alcohol container and fill it up as necessary every day during cold weather. Remember, daily air tank drainage is still needed to get rid of water and oil. So to have an understanding about how this works, by a show of hands, how many of you all have ever put alcohol in the freezer before?
No, y'all did.
All right, we got.
Everybody and their mama put their hand up for that one.
Hold on. Wait a second there, folks. If you raise your hand, just keep your hand up. I need to get your names down so we can send you for drug and alcohol screening. No, I'm just kidding. So, when we look at or we think about the process that's taking place when you put alcohol in the freezer, notice the alcohol doesn't freeze. That's because the molecules in alcohol are so reactive, they don't slow down enough, even cold temperatures, to freeze over. And therefore, alcohol can be sprayed in the air brake valves and other parts during cold weather. So keep in mind that the alcohol evaporator is an add-on feature. It is not required on all vehicles equipped with air brakes. In fact, we commonly see it used on vehicles that are driven in constant cold weather conditions, such as the Alaskan and Canadian Arctics. You may know those drivers to be ice road truckers. You've probably seen the film, watched the TV show. Some drivers may also use an alcohol evaporator up around the Great Lakes during the winter months. If you ever driven in Minnesota, you'll probably understand why it's necessary to have such equipment. If your vehicle has an alcohol evaporator, you want to check the alcohol levels and refill it as often as necessary during cold weather driving. Now, going back to the required parts, so far we have created compressed air, we have stored that air, but just like anything Too much of a good thing could be a bad thing. Too much salt or sugar in our diet could be bad for our health. And too much air in an air brake system could damage the system. Too much air pressure could damage hoses, linings, and fittings. And therefore, commercial motor vehicles equipped with air brakes have what we call a safety relief valve. A safety relief valve is installed on the first tank the air compressor pumps air to. The safety valve protects the tank and the rest of the system from too much pressure. The valve is usually set to open at 150 psi. If the safety valve releases, let's elaborate on this a little bit. So let's say, for example, you're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden a deer jumps out into the road, causing you to brake. By applying and releasing the service brake, air will go out of the system. That air can only be made up by the air compressor. The air compressor cuts on and begins recreating that compressed air, when all of a sudden, the governor decides to quit and stops working. When this happens, the air compressor will not know when to shut off. It will continue to build the air pressure past the safe level, which is around 125 psi. When the pressure in the system reaches the danger zone, which is around 150 psi, the safety valve will open, exhausting the excess air pressure, bringing the levels back down to the safe level. If you're driving and you see your air pressure gauges fluctuate between 150 and 125, or you hear the safety valve open, that's the indication that the governor has failed. You could continue driving to the nearest safe place where you can effectively have the vehicle fixed. Does anyone have any questions about that so far?
Man, 1, 2, 3 quiz.
Once again, one way to indicate that the governor has failed is that your air pressure gauge will fluctuate between 125 and 150 psi, where you'll hear the safety valve open. Safety valve is very loud, it's unmistakable. You'll definitely hear that.
You about to take the quiz?
y'all looking for, what is it, 5.1?
It should be, yeah, because we left off at 3.0 yesterday. What it look like?
You had 5 questions.
So far we have
It's 5.
created
Is it
compressed
hard?
air. We have stored the air.
Huh?
We have even kept the system safe
You
from
in it?
too much air.
You know, man, no.
Now that we have air in the system, now we can talk about applying the brakes. Now, as we begin the journey and as we talk about applying the brakes, we're going to start off once again with the service system. We'll then talk about the emergency and parking systems and how they apply their braking power. Keep in mind that the service system is the most important of the 3 systems. The service system is what we use to slow and stop the vehicle once the vehicle is underway. To do so, we use the brake pedal. You apply the brakes by pressing down the brake pedal, also called the foot valve or treadle valve. The foot valve or treadle valve. Now we'll go into this and explore this just a bit so we can have an understanding of the terminology that we're using here. So note that on vehicles equipped with hydraulic brakes, we typically use a brake pedal. Brake pedal is designed and looks something like this, where we have a mounting bracket or basket, as we will call it, which is mounted to the vehicle's firewall. Connected to that, we have called the brake shaft, and then we have a brake pedal. Connected to the shaft is a rod that goes through the firewall into what we call a brake master cylinder. That brake master cylinder has a vacuum pump which pushes hydraulic fluid held in a reservoir out to the foundational brake components found at each wheel. These foundational brake components are used to create friction that will slow and stop the vehicle. However, on vehicles equipped with air brakes, it does not work this way. As with air brakes, we do not use any type of fluid to apply or release the brakes. We use what's called compressed air. The compressed air must be moved from
What is it? It's to show how much pressure in your
The
pedal?
air
foot
tanks.
valve consists
Huh?
of
So
a
how
foot
much air
mount,
pressure is in the air tank? That's the right answer.
a floor mount.
Hey, my kid,
Underneath the floor, we have what's called a relay hose,
We'll take it
a
in.
return hose, and an exhaust port. When the foot valve is depressed, air is sent to a relay valve. The relay valve determines how much pressure is being applied by the foot valve and then sends that amount of air pressure from the air tanks to the foundational brake components found in each wheel. Those foundational brake components are used to create friction that will slow and stop the vehicle.
No, I'm okay with that.
So note that the term foot valve, also known as treadle valve, because we tread on things with our feet, applies to the brake pedal in vehicles equipped with air brakes. So you may see one of those 3 terminologies. You should know that they mean the same thing. On the foot valve reduces the air pressure and releases the brakes. Releasing the brakes lets some compressed air go up out of the system. This is so the air pressure in the tanks is reduced. This air must be made up by the compressor. Pressing and releasing the valve unnecessarily could let air up faster than the compressor can replace it. If the pressure gets too low, the brakes will not work. So keep in mind, if the pressure in the system is too low, you will not have any brakes. In other words, you won't be able to stop the vehicle. Now, in order to stop the vehicle, we must use friction. Friction is created by the foundational brake components found at each wheel. That is the foundational brake components. Say it with me. Foundational brake components. The foundational brake components are also referred to as foundation brakes. These brakes are found at each wheel, on each axle. They're used to slow and stop the vehicle, or to hold the vehicle in place when the vehicle is in use. There are three basic types of foundational brake components found on commercial motor vehicles today. We have S-cam drum brakes, wedge brakes, and disc brakes. Disc brakes are not displayed on the screen. I do apologize once again for the discrepancies in the slide. The S-cam drum brakes are the most common of these three types found on commercial vehicles today. Wedge brakes are less common, and they're typically used on oversized or heavy hauling equipment. And disc brakes, though they are very effective at stopping the vehicle and dissipating heat, they are more costly. And due to their expensive overhead, they're not as common as S-cam drum brakes. Because S-cam drum brakes are so common, the Department of Transportation requires all drivers to know about them. So we're going to be focusing our attention on S-cam drum brakes. We'll talk about how they work, how they function, and how they apply their braking power to the vehicle. We're going to first take a look at that through the lens of this automated diagram. This provides a descriptive detail as how the S-cam drum brakes work. mechanisms. Here on the rear side of the chamber, we have what's called the spring side of the chamber. The spring side of the chamber consists of a large coiled spring. That large coiled spring is utilized by both the parking and or emergency systems. Then we have here what's called the service system. The service side of the system consists of a rubber diaphragm which expands and contracts and applies the service brakes. Not all brake chambers are considered dual chambers. They only have of the brake chamber or the spring side of the brake chamber. Those that house just the surface side of the system is typically used on the front axle of the vehicle, as you do not need spring brakes on the front axle. These parts of the chamber are held on using these large clamps. These large clamps are held together with a nut and bolt. Therefore, this is also referred to as a clamp style chamber. This is a dual clamp style chamber. By way of push rod, we see that the push rod runs the full length of the brake chamber. The push rod is acted on by the brake mechanisms inside the chamber. This causes the push rod to expand and or contract. When the push rod moves out or expands, it does so against the slack adjuster. The slack adjuster in return turns the camshaft. The camshaft then rotates what we call the S-cam. It's the rotation of the S-cam that applies and or releases the brakes. Taking a look at how that works, we can see an example here. The push rod moves out against the slack adjuster. They make a 90-degree angle of one another. In other words, they make a complete L shape. This indicates that the brakes are in adjustment. If they made an acute angle or an obtuse angle, that would indicate that the brakes are out of adjustment. You want to have them checked and fixed by a mechanic. Automatic slack adjusters, as the one pictured here, will automatically adjust the slack in the brakes. All commercial motor vehicles equipped with air brakes, or I should say S-cam drum brakes, manufactured since the model year 1994, should have automatic slack adjusters. Automatic slack adjusters adjust themselves, but they should still be checked. We're going to go into the inner workings of the brake chamber to see how the brake mechanisms inside the chamber move the push rod, thus applying and or releasing the brakes. Are applied and or released. Notice that we have here both sides of the chamber. We have to the rear the spring side of the chamber, which is used by both the parking and or emergency system, and then the front of the chamber where we have the service system. Looking on the spring side of the chamber, we can see that we have this large coiled spring. This spring expands and contracts with air pressure. It does so by being acted upon by this rubber diaphragm. The rubber diaphragm expands and contracts with air pressure, thus compressing the large spring, or allowing the large coiled spring to expand. In its current condition, the parking brake is set. To release the parking brake, the driver would push in the yellow diamond-shaped push-pull control knob inside the cab, labeled parking brake. When the driver pushes this knob in, air is sent into the brake chamber. That air acts on the rubber diaphragm, thus compressing the large coiled spring. When the large coiled spring is compressed, the push rod will detach from the spring side of the chamber. This allows the wheels to roll freely. Now that the wheels are rolling freely, the driver would need to apply the surface brakes using a foot valve. The surface side of the chamber consists of a rubber diaphragm. It also has a smaller coiled spring. This smaller coiled spring is known as the return spring, as it is used to return the rubber diaphragm back to its fixed position when the surface brakes are released. To apply the surface brake, the driver would use the foot valve. When the foot valve is depressed, air is sent to a relay valve. The relay valve determines how much pressure is being applied by the foot valve. It sends that amount of air pressure from the air tanks to the surface side of the chamber. Air is then sent to the chamber, acting on the rubber diaphragm, thus expanding the rubber diaphragm and applying the brakes. With this example, we can see what we call an overstroke. An overstroke means that the driver has applied too much pressure to the foot valve. We can tell this by the distance between the rubber diaphragm and the outer wall of the chamber. Notice that they're so close, if they were to come in contact with one another, they could damage the surface brakes. Remember, air brakes are a safe way of stopping large and heavy vehicles. Therefore, drivers will not need to apply much pressure to the brakes. Here we're going to take a look at an example of a normal stroke. So note that when the driver takes the foot off the foot valve, air goes out of the chamber and the brakes are released. During a normal stroke, the driver would apply the foot valve, air is sent to the surface side of the chamber, and note that there's plenty of space between the outer wall of the chamber and the rubber diaphragm. This ensures that the rubber diaphragm is not damaged and that the brakes are ready to use. When the driver takes the foot off the foot valve, notice the return spring will return the rubber diaphragm back to its position. This allows the surface brakes to be ready to apply when necessary. Now, when it comes to applying the spring brake, this could be done in one or two ways. It could be done by the driver using the yellow diamond-shaped push-pull control knob inside the cab, labeled parking brake, or it may be done by the emergency system. Remember, the emergency system is a series of sensor and valve. Whether done manually by the driver or done automatically by the emergency system, in the case of an emergency, to to apply the spring brakes, air must be evacuated from the chamber. When air evacuates the chamber, the large coiled spring will expand, thus applying the brakes. The slack adjusted to the camshaft. The slack adjusted to the camshaft. The S-cam. We call it an S-cam because it shows the letter S. Here on the S-cam we have what's called the low point or valley. And here we have what's called the high point or the crest. When the push rod moves out against the slack adjuster will turn the camshaft. The camshaft will rotate the S-cam. It's the rotation of the S-cam that thus applies and or releases the brakes. When we add the other components here, we can see how the rotation of the S-cam affects the brake components. Other brake components that we have include the S-cam rollers, which roll or ride the S-cam to its high and low points. These are connected to the brake shoe, which is outlined in gold.
You know, the number
The
of
brake
people
shoes
dropped in the class.
houses the friction material, or what we call
Well, you gotta
friction
think.
pad, which is outlined in the burnt orange.
All the people that was in Ohio, they told them to return to their regular classes.
Oh, yeah.
That was Monday, remember?
Into the vehicle's axle.
Ain't that many people in here. 108.
We also have what we call the return spring. These return springs returns the brake shoes back to its fixed or normal position when the brakes are released. The push rod moves back against the slack adjuster. The slack adjuster rotates the S-cam. The rollers run the S-cam to its high point, pushing the brake shoes outward. This is what applies the brakes. When the brakes are released, the return spring pulls the brake shoes back to its fixed position as the rollers ride the S-cam to the low point. Let's add the drum and wheel here and see how this all works together to create braking. Notice when the brakes are applied, the liners move out against the drum. This creates friction and heat. The friction and heat will wear down the liners over time. As the liners wear down, the slack adjuster will make up for the slack in the brakes. Until eventually the slack adjuster can no longer make up for this slack. When this happens, there will be no contact or friction. This means you will not be able to stop the vehicle. Being that both the spring and service mechanisms both use the same foundational brake component, you will not have any brakes.
What?
There's a little escape ramp, you gotta make one.
Take your ass run off the
So
road.
now, there are those that are required on vehicles equipped with air brakes. That add on to the air brake system to make it more effective and maintain the system. The first of which is known as the supply pressure gauge, which is required on all vehicles equipped with air brakes, as all vehicles with air brakes must have a gauge connected to the air tanks. This gauge tells you how much air you have available in the air tanks. If the vehicle has a dual air brake system, there will be a gauge for each half of the system, or a single gauge with two needles. Easy way to remember the supply pressure gauge: anytime you supply something, you make it available. Supply pressure, available air. Then there's the application pressure gauge. This gauge is not required on all vehicles equipped with air brakes, but can be added on to an air brake system to make it more effective or to help maintain the system. This gauge shows how much air pressure you are applying to the brake. This gauge may be used to keep or even at increasing application pressure to hold the same speed means that the brakes are fading. You should slow down and use a low gear, as the need for increased pressure can also be caused by the brakes being out of adjustment, air leaks, or other mechanical problems. Keep in mind that the application pressure gauge tells you how much pressure you are applying to the brakes. Easy way to remember this is whenever you're applying something, there's usually an application process. Application, apply pressure. Drivers behind you must be warned when you put your brakes on. The air brake system does this with an electric switch that works by air pressure. The switch turns on the brake lights when you put on the air brakes. You know, in your rental car, truck, or vehicle equipped with hydraulic brakes, there's usually an electric switch that's mounted either on the back of the dashboard or on the firewall. When you depress the brake pedal, the shaft of the brake pedal closes an electric circuit, and then it turns on the brake light. That's how drivers behind you are warned when you put your brakes on. Because vehicles equipped with air brakes do not have a brake pedal, but uses a foot valve, when the foot valve is depressed, air is sent to a relay chamber, it closes an electric circuit, and the brake lights come on. Vehicles equipped with air brakes is an electric that works by pressure. It works by air pressure. It's an electric switch that works by air pressure. All right, now we have talked about how this works and functions. Let's move on now to another system. That is the emergency system. I know what you're saying. Instructor James, what about the parking system? We'll get back to that. The parking system is the emergency complex. So I want to spend a little bit more time getting this, talking about its engineering, how it works and functions. Then we'll talk about the parking system. So keep in mind that the emergency system is automatic. It cannot be controlled by the driver. In other words, there is no physical brake. The emergency system is a series of sensor and valve. What does this mean? Series means that it happens in order. And there are multiple steps. The sensor is known as the low pressure warning sensor. This sensor detects a rapid air loss in the system and then alerts the driver that the pressure in the system is low. It does this using what we call a low air pressure warning signal, which is required on vehicles equipped with air brakes. A warning signal, you can see, must come on before the air pressure in the tanks falls below 60 psi. This is usually a red light on the instrument cluster, or the words low air that will appear on the dash. There is also a buzzer that may sound. This is known as the audible warning. This could also be a beeping sound. There may also be a third type of warning.
I
This
talked to my
third
homie
type
today,
is known
the one that
as
came
the
through here to
wigwag
this school.
or wiggle
He
warning.
talking about, who's your instructor? I said,
This
motherfucker,
is
we ain't
a
got no instructor. It's
secondary
online. He said, what? He said, nah, when he came through here, they had an instructor, like a little military black guy. He was an instructor here, with a woman in the front. But I told him, shit, we ain't got no instructor now. It's online instructor. He was surprised when he heard that shit.
That's when I told my old lady that, she was like, so you taking
There
a
are two
virtual
types.
class? I was like, hey, yeah, you paying for a virtual class, basically.
Pretty much.
Going out there, getting
I feel like you learn better with a dude here, physical, like, telling you. And then you wouldn't be half-ass tired either. If somebody actually was sitting and talking to you in person.
And automatic.
But he was surprised when he heard about
And
the
automatic.
online shit.
I tell you, that's
Say
like
with me.
over.
Manual.
That's about the business. When you come back to that part.
And
like,
automatic.
that's a instructor.
They getting right here. They making the fucking killing,
Man, when I
dog.
first seen that shit, until one of my coworkers, ex-coworkers, I thought it was a scam. I came over here a couple different times. Like, I'm like, ain't no goddamn way.
This is an
a
example
scam.
of
What?
Like, I thought it was a scam.
Because of the price?
No, like, cause first I was talking to somebody somewhere
Notice
else
that it's
on
mounted
the phone,
above the
and I
driver's
came
head,
over here.
typically
I
where
was
the
like,
thighs
I
are
ride
pointed.
past it all the time. Like, this shit don't look right, you
When the
know.
pressure in the system
And I only knew about
falls
Greenville Tech
to
and
the
the one
range
down,
of 60
the one down
psi,
here in
the
Bluff
warning
Road,
device
knew
will
about
fall
that.
down.
And
But they
and
ain't
to
used to
the
be
view
here.
of
They
the
used to
driver,
be on
possibly
Millwood.
startling
so
the driver and causing an
when I
accident.
came, like I say, and talked, it was another lady. It wasn't her. But I ended up talking to her about something. It was another lady. Just talking to her. And she didn't
Notice
have
that it
like a
says
whole
stop.
insight.
Low
She,
air.
did you talk to the lady on the phone?
Then it
Like,
prompts the driver to
they're not
reset
around here.
by
They
moving
somewhere
it
else,
to
but
the
it's
right.
associated with.
Right.
That's how we identify that this
She
is
was like, can you
a
come back? And
manual
I came
reset
back
type.
another time. It was her.
This
and
means that the driver
her.
can manually reset it when the pressure in the system
Third
rises
time I
above
came
60
over with
psi.
her, but I seen
The
like
driver
6
can
people
move
in
the
here.
device to the
And
right,
it was a guy I actually know
And it
on the
will
street
raise out of the
personally. He
view of
was
the
coming
driver.
in though at the same time.
in a automatic reset type, it will automatically rise out of the view of the driver when the pressure in the system rises above 70
He was working for my
psi.
brother. So I was thinking like, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. But I did not know that, you know what I'm saying? And truth being told, after I told my cousin, he was like, bro, cause he in Atlanta, he
You will
got
also
2 brand
wanna
new
note
trucks.
that
And
it is
if you could
common
have just came down here,
On
cause you gotta
large
keep the trucks
buses.
going to make money. We could have just did a lot of talking and you looked at it and took the damn test like that. You know what I'm saying?
For the warning devices, the signal
I
at
got the
80
book
to
at home.
85 psi.
You're gonna have, you need a truck that'll pass DOT inspection. That's all.
This
They
gives
got the
a
truck.
early warning
Right.
detection to the driver
So
or the
basically, you
passenger
know, since
carrying
you're gonna
vehicle,
do the downshift,
so that the
going around
driver may
curve,
get the vehicle
back in
to
a
a
straight
safe
line,
location
back into
before the
the
spring brakes come on.
you know,
As when the
the
spring
cone
brakes are
shit.
applied,
you do that yourself.
they're
Technically,
applied
you
instantly,
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and therefore inertia could cause injury to the passenger.
That's what it boils down to. You know what I'm saying? Once you get in here, you see like,
Remember that as large
Well,
buses,
too late for us now.
yeah,
Yeah.
We in on this now.
which
We in for the
commonly
long
have
haul.
these
So
So
early
hopefully this
warning
motherfucker should
detections,
pay off and we all get our CDL.
the devices will signal at 80 to 85 psi.
You should pass yours though. You said you done had
yeah.
yours.
I'm talking about them was some ball buses. They had,
So now that we
got
know about
man, you drive, they ain't even want you to drive speed limit.
Boom.
Yeah. Come on over there. Hey, slow it down.
the service
You know what I'm saying? We all probably be in the truck like together.
Mm-hmm.
Two of us sitting in
talks
the back,
about the
three of us
sensor
sitting in the back.
of the
They turn
emergency
drive.
system. Note that the emergency system consists of a sensor and valve. The valve is known as the tractor
They were older guys. All
Old heads.
protection valve.
one young guy. All of
The
them
tractor
were 50 plus. One young guy was like in his
protection
30s at the
valve.
time. All the rest of them were 50 plus. They knew what they were talking about doing. They had a million
This
miles.
valve will close, shutting the air off to the spring brakes, causing the springs to put on the brakes.
Every truck, the tank.
And that is known as
Yeah.
emergency braking.
double.
For a million miles, a lot of
Let's go a
miles.
little bit more into detail with
A
this.
lot of some Peterbilts,
Here's
but
what we need to know about
wow,
spring
big
brakes.
old 18
Must
speed.
be held on by
I'll take that
mechanical
big bus
force.
and put me some
As with the
custom lights
service
on that
system,
bitch.
air could leak
When I
away,
get my own rig.
and therefore spring brakes are used
That bitch be horrible.
to meet this need. When driving, powerful springs are held back by air pressure. If the air pressure is removed, the spring will put on the brakes. A parking brake control inside the cab allows the driver to let air out of the spring brakes. This allows the springs to put on the brakes, and is known as parking brakes. A leak in the air brake system, which causes all the air to be lost, will also cause the springs to put on the brakes. This is known as emergency braking. Tractor and string truck spring brakes will come on fully when the air pressure drops to the range of 20 to 45 psi, typically 20 to 30 psi in a single unit. Now I want to pause right there for a moment and kind of straighten some things out here. Back when they edited and printed the CDO manual, I believe this was probably during the time when we were probably still using dot matrix and didn't have spell check. They made a grammatical error here and they never corrected the problem. We haven't had a new copy printed since, and it has not undergone current editing. Hopefully it will. We'll get a new up-to-date CDO manual with new up-to-date information and technology. But until then, this is what we got. But there's an error here that we need to correct, and that error is the way that they laid out the pressure measurements. Okay, the way that they laid out the pressure measurements is incorrect here. Why do you say that, Instructor James? Because 2245 is an example of air pressure rising, not an example of air pressure falling.
You warm?
The correct way.
I turned it up to 75, so
45 to
hopefully
20
a little warmer.
PSI, or 30 to 20 psi. That is an example of air pressure falling. Now you will see it written backwards on your in your CDO manual. You'll also see it written backwards on your exam. But for the sake of avoiding confusion, you should know that they mean 45 to 20. It's just an error. We're gonna overlook it, okay? Awesome. You all are good sports. Do not wait for the brakes to come on automatically. When the low air pressure warning light and buzzer first come on, bring the vehicle to a safe stop right away while you still can control the service brakes. So the emergency system, it starts with a low pressure warning sensor. It triggers the signals, and then it triggers the tractor protection valve. The tractor protection valve will close when the pressure of the system falls to the range of 45 to 20 psi. When the tractor protection valve closes, it shuts the air off to the spring brakes, which causes the springs to put on the brakes. That process is known to the same foundational brake components. Therefore, the slack adjuster must make up for the slack in the brakes. If not, you will not have any brakes, and you will not be able to stop the vehicle. How it worked and functioned with the animated diagram. Spring brakes, you pull it out to apply them. You push it in to release the spring brakes, and you pull it out to apply them. In to release, out to apply. In to release, In to release, and out to apply. Say it. And out to apply. Say it with me. In to release, and out to apply.
That's why that thing when you push, set them damn parking brakes on.
Now, there is a cautionary measure that every driver should take when using your brakes. You should never apply both the spring and service brakes simultaneously. In other words, you should not apply the service brakes when the spring brakes are on. If you do, the combined forces of the two brakes could damage the foundational brake components. This could lead to a loss of your braking power. You should always release the spring brakes before you apply the foot valve. Now, I know for many of us, this is going to be something we're going to have to make a valid effort at. And the reason why I say that is not because you're not competent or able, but just because of habit. In your regular car or truck, at least those that have automatic transmissions, your brake pedal acts as a brake/clutch. This allows you to be able to move the gear shift lever when you're shifting the gear out of park. But note that commercial motor vehicles do not work this way. Commercial motor vehicles, whether automatic or manual, does not have a parking gear. They have a drive gear, a neutral, and a reverse. We park the vehicle by using the parking brake, which is separate from the drivetrain. Therefore, you should release the spring brakes before you apply the service brake. You want to release the spring brakes before you apply the service brakes. You should release the spring brakes before you apply the service brakes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, give yourselves a round of applause. Come on, put your hands together, people. I can see you. I'm looking right at you. Just get your hands together. There you go. Awesome. At least pretend like you're enthused. You say, why do we need to do that, Instructor James? Because this marks
Somebody asked him why you
a
did
point of no return. You have just learned everything that you need to know in regards to air brake systems, how they work and function. Now we're going to go a step further here. We're going to talk about some add-on features which can be added on to the air brake system to make it more effective or to help maintain the system. Note that these are additional components and are not found on all vehicles equipped with air brakes. The first one is known as the front brake limiting valve. The front brake limiting valve. Some older vehicles, those made before 1975, have a front brake limiting valve and a control for it inside the cab. The control is usually marked normal and or slippery. When you put the control in the slippery position, the limiting valve cuts the normal air pressure to your front brakes by half. Limiting valves were used to reduce the chances of front wheel skidding on slippery surfaces. However, they actually reduce the stopping power of your vehicle. Since 1975, technology has taught us that I'm trying to figure out where my audience is today.
See what I mean? It's supposed to be more people than this. At 119.
Mm-hmm.
As tests have shown that front wheel skids from braking are not likely even
going on with him?
Behind the driver. Now, something to keep in mind here about the front brake limiting valves, and that is they're no longer needed on modern day vehicles. Those that have them cannot be controlled by the driver. So this brings us to a pop quiz question. Pop quiz! Whiz of pop! By which operating system? I'm sorry. My apologies. Let me see what we got here. By which operating system is the front brake limiting valve used? By which operating system is the front brake limiting valve being used? Excellent, you all are sharp. You sharp people? It is used by the service. We know that because it applies when you use the service brake. Next we have what's called the modulating control valve. I always like how that sounds. Modulating control valve.
Name by a lot. The next test pretty hard. The next test pretty hard.
What you scored?
40. I should have waited until he got to the next
The
test.
control handle on the dashboard may be used to
6.2?
apply the spring brakes gradually.
5 something.
Oh,
This is called a modulating valve. It is springless, so you have a feel for the braking action. The more you move the control lever, the harder the spring brakes come on. They work this way so you can control the spring brakes if the service brakes fail. When parking a vehicle with a modulating control valve, you want to move the Sanford and Son, discos,
I got 100 now, though.
leather,
you took it twice?
Yeah.
How many questions? 5?
50.
Man,
Yeah, fuck with you. 5.
the 5?
Yeah.
Oh.
Alright, so there we go, right there. That's what it looks like. We have the handle, control handle.
I'm gonna sit my ass back and actually take notes now.
Set down gradually.
I won't be the one failing like that.
That's if your service brakes fail.
Motherfucker got me
then you'll
failing
be
over
able
here.
to slow and stop the vehicle safely. Note that if you just pull
You know, I want to be the answer to questions and know I'm getting it right the first time and not having to get it right because I see your answer correct on the screen. That's how you know something.
This allows you to do it gradually.
Fuck around and get a bad grade on the first go in.
Now, you may see something like this in one of our road tractors when you're out there on the yard. And the reason why we have those in our road tractors, usually they're mounted on the passenger side of the vehicle. That's so us instructors, if the student loses control of the vehicle or starts driving erratically, we can regain control by slowing and stopping the vehicle. Because the spring brakes, they have enough power where they can, in most cases, override the drivetrain. Why am I telling you this? Well, because if you're driving down the road with your instructor and he starts to reach for them, you probably messed up. So don't fret. Just allow him to slow the vehicle down and proceed to the back. And watch and observe. Okay? Just kidding. But I'm really serious now. So this brings us to a pop quiz question. Pop quiz! Quiz of pop. By which operating system would the modulated control valve be used? right. For those of you who said the parking system, you would be correct. How do we know? Well, the parking system is the only system that allows you to manually control the spring brakes. And last but not least, we have here what's called the dual parking control valve. When main air pressure is lost, the spring brakes will come on. This is known as emergency braking. Some vehicles, such as large buses, have a separate air tank which can be used to release these spring brakes once applied. This is so you can move the vehicle in an emergency. This valve is spring-loaded so you have a feel for the braking action. The more you move the lever, the brakes will release. When you release the lever, the spring brakes will come on again. There's only enough air in the separate tank to do this a few times. Therefore, you want to plan carefully when moving. Otherwise, you may be stopped in a dangerous location when the separate air supply runs out. Now, taking a look here at what this looks like, we can get an example here using figure 5.3. So we see here that the parking brake control is yellow and diamond shaped. And then we have here what's called the dual parking control valve. Notice that it's round in shape. It may be blue, black, or white in color. Is a power. By which operating system would the dual parking control valve be used? By which operating system would the dual parking control valve be used? That's right. For those of you who said the emergency system, you're correct. Note that the emergency system cannot be controlled by the driver. If the emergency system automatically comes on, the driver can release the spring brakes by using the dual parking control valve. This allows the driver to get the vehicle to a safe location before the separate air supply runs out. So notice that we finish how we start. We started off with service, parking in the middle, and then emergency. We ended with service, parking, and emergency. We have just one more add-on feature to talk about. This is something that we previously discussed in general knowledge as it applied to hydraulic brake systems. That's right, we're talking about anti-lock braking system, or ABS. Here's how it applies to vehicles equipped with air brakes.